What's up, guys? I am Bradley. That's Zach in the middle. That's Dawson on your right. And you are listening to the Charm City Sideline podcast. Today, we are continuing our offseason position preview series. We have talked about edge rushers, we have talked about offensive line, and today we are going to get into wide receiver, a topic that is always going to be talked about in Baltimore until the end of time. We will start with Zach here. What are your overall thoughts on the receiver position going into this offseason?
It feels pretty good. Zay's your solidified number one. Bateman's a solidified number two if we need him to be. And I think the discussion for this offseason is getting a wide receiver three, a competent one. Not anything against Nelson Aguilar, but I think an upgrade at that, even if it's slight, is better than nothing. And right now there seems to be some good options in that department. There's a long list of big names as well that they could make a splash with if they wanted to, but I think the Ravens are going to lean towards just fixing the position, slightly upgrading it over a bigger splash, because eventually you'll have to pay Zay. You have a great deal with Bateman right now. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think Zach nailed that on the head perfectly right there. I think this is a position that this offseason, the Ravens don't need to go out and spend and get a big ticket free agent or anything like that. I think you can kind of sit back and realistically let the market play itself out and target a wide receiver three. This is finally an offseason where, of course, like Brad mentioned, every offseason, this is always a fun one to talk about, but this is finally an offseason where the Ravens don't have to go out and worry about getting a legitimate wide receiver one or two. They could literally sit back for weeks and they could find someone back into free agency whose market hasn't played up to its potential. And they can get a pretty good deal on a guy who can come in and no discredit towards him, like Zach said, but be a better wide receiver than Nelson Aguilar. And that would be obviously very beneficial to the Ravens. We're going to get into this, of course, but I would probably prefer them to wait out and go the free agent route and hopefully get a veteran guy who's been there, done that, and can help these young guys get even better. And, of course, Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, I would say my overall takeaway right now is the fact that, you guys mentioned every offseason, this is always a major talking point. Basically, how do the Ravens fix the receiver room? And you go in, you draft Hollywood in 2019, you draft Bateman in 2021, you draft Zay Flowers in 2023. It's just like not giving up, right? Just going draft after draft, trying to take, receivers in the first round. They did what, 3 in 5 years? And, last offseason even, we had questions about Bateman. And now it's like you got two guys that you can trust and that are ballers. And it's a nice spot to be in. With that said, obviously you want to upgrade still. Going into this offseason, the Ravens' free agents in the wide receiver room are obviously Nelson Aguilar. Tylan Wallace is another one, probably not going to be as talked about as much. Maybe they can retain him, but we'll see. And then Steven Sims and Deontay Hardy. In terms of who's on the roster this coming season, who will be here in August, you got Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Tez Walker, the rookie from last year, caught one pass, one touchdown against the Giants. And then you got a couple guys on reserve futures deals. So these are guys that are guaranteed to be on that 90-man roster going into camp. Got Anthony Miller, Dayton Wade, Keith Kirkwood, and Malik Cunningham. Dawson, you got any thoughts on either the free agents the Ravens have or the guys they currently have on the roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think we kind of mentioned this at one point during the season. I don't remember which episode it was, but it feels really nice for the Ravens to finally have two very capable, good receivers. And not to mention, they're both homegrown talents that we drafted and developed, which makes it even better because obviously we all know the troubled track history of Ravens and receivers. It's not pretty. And for once, it finally feels like it's not a need. And it's a real situation where the Ravens could very lightly address it and we'd still be confident going into next season. I just think that realistically right now, Bate and Zay are the only two guys you got to focus on, of course. And I think you could probably, of course, you have Tez Walker, who drafted, who's going to be here. But after those two guys, I really don't think there's anyone to focus on. I think the Ravens need to go out and probably grab two receivers, whether that's through a draft pick or maybe two low-end free agents that come in and serve as a 3 or 4. Because after that, I'm okay with all those free agents we mentioned leaving, to be honest with you. The only one that would maybe entertain me would be Tylan Wallace coming back on a short team-friendly deal just for special team purposes. But, other than that, you're not getting much production from them, on the field as a wide receiver. So it doesn't worry me too much, but there's a lot of free agent options this offseason from the outside of the organization, and budget friendly, man. There's some guys we can get, and it'd be big time.
Yeah, maybe we're like not selling someone like Nelson Aguilar as much as we should. If he's gonna have a market value of around $2 to $3 million, he had some pretty big catches for us. Maybe the team entertains a deal to bring him back, just as another positive locker room presence.
Yeah,
I'm not banging the drum wanting him, but I wouldn't be opposed. It was kind of the funny signing whenever Lamar was asking for a trade and all. It was like, oh yeah, Nelson Aguilar. But
yeah.
I don't know. That's one of them. I think Hardy is also a name to watch. I think he was pretty good for the Ravens special teams wise until he got injured. If he's willing to come back on a 1-year deal, that's kind of what those special teams guys are all about. But other than that, I totally agree with you, Dawson. I feel like the core of this team, as in Zay and Rashad, is all you could ask for. And by what you said, Brad, if we're drafting one in Hollywood 2019 and then 2021 and then 2023, technically this year we'd make a splash again if it's by that. So maybe, but I don't know. Yeah, just by following that. But I'm feeling good about this room right now.
See, my issue with Nelson Aguilar is, and he's obviously a pretty good player. He's not a bum. He's not a bad receiver. Like, you got to entertain him coming back, and especially at the market value of a couple million a season or something like that. And he's been here for the past few years. Like, he has the chemistry developed. My issue with that, though, is more than likely if the Ravens bring him back, it's going to be very early on, maybe even potentially before the free agent market, just knowing that they can get him, signed early, and that'd be a probably pretty easy negotiation period. Like, my issue is if they do that, there's like a 98% chance that he's our wide receiver 3 next year, and they probably wouldn't even entertain any of the other free agent options out there. And we're going to get into this here shortly, but there's so many out there that I want the Ravens to call. I want them to entertain these options and at least seek outsider, these guys, because they're no discredit, but they can be much better than Nelson Aguilar. And I would really, really be happy if the Ravens can get a very serviceable wide receiver 3, because it really sucks when you have to go into Buffalo in the divisional round and you're down your wide receiver 1 and you have one capable wide receiver going in there in Rashad Bateman. And like I said, no hate, but it is what it is. I don't want the Ravens to lose one wide receiver again and they have one receiver that can do any damage. I want to have 3 options. Therefore, you still have 2 capable guys if something were to happen.
Yeah, not to keep beating the same drum that we did during the regular season, but like, they brought Deontay Johnson in for a reason, because they felt like they needed another wide receiver. They needed a better wide receiver 3. So it will be interesting to see what they do this offseason. In terms of trade candidates, obviously there's some guys that could be traded that no one was really expecting. That doesn't happen a ton. But the guys who are rumored to be in the trade market, Deebo Samuel, I think kind of wants out of San Francisco, kind of wants a fresh start. Cooper Kupp, I think it was more so the Rams kind of wanting to move on from him and giving him the option to seek for a trade. You got Devontae Adams on the Jets. Aaron Rodgers is gone, so probably not going to be staying there unless they go out and get like Matthew Stafford or something. And then Garrett Wilson, obviously another guy on the Jets. 1 year left on his rookie deal. That would be a massive trade in terms of haul. So personally, I don't want the Ravens to get any of these 4 guys. I wouldn't really feel great. Like Deebo for $16 million, I don't really think too highly of that move. Cooper Kupp, I would love for $10 million, not 30. So, and then obviously Adams is unrealistic, and I think Garrett Wilson is unrealistic as well.
I mean, I probably have to agree with you, Brad. It's nice to think about these guys hypothetically being a Raven in an alternate universe. I just don't see it happening with these numbers we're looking at. It's just a lot of money for realistically what? I mean, we're talking about wide receiver 3 here, and you bring in one of these guys, and he's probably the wide receiver 2, maybe wide receiver 1. I mean, a Garrett Wilson acquisition. I mean, you can't tell me that he's not going to fight for Zay over wide receiver 1 reps. So I think that it's unrealistic. It's fun to think about, of course, but I just, in no world do I see the Ravens going out here spending $15 million or more to bring in a wide receiver this offseason. They got a good gig right now with what they're paying Bate, and obviously Zay is on a small contract for his rookie deal. So I don't see it happening. It'd be crazy if they prove me wrong and they go out and do it. It would be a shocker to everyone, I believe.
Yeah.
I just think that, what we're going to get into with these low end free agents is much more realistic for an organization that time and time again, is very shy with money as far as the wide receiver position.
Yeah. So in terms of free agents, obviously there's a ton. Something that's interesting in the world of Cincinnati, Ohio, is are they going to be able to pay T. Higgins? I think they're going to tag him and hopefully for them, try to get an extension done. However, in my opinion, I mean, if they're paying Chase and Higgins, I kind of feel fine with that because who else are they going to pay? But anyway, moving on from that, I'm just going to list them really quick. T. Higgins, Chris Godwin, Amari Cooper, Stephon Diggs, D-Hop, Hollywood Brown, Darius Slayton, Keenan Allen, Deontay Johnson, Mike Williams, Josh Palmer, Elijah Moore, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, MVS, Noah Brown, and of course Nelson Aguilar. Zach, I don't really know how to pose an exact question here, but I guess just who's a guy that you either want the Ravens to sign or you think the Ravens are going to sign?
So want is a different answer.
Yeah.
The want would be kind of following still in the Ravens steps of targeting receivers, because just looking at this group, it's not ridiculous numbers. It's starting to be some veteran guys on there that you could get for deals that aren't necessarily team friendly, but can be structured in a way that are beneficial for both sides.
Yeah.
You do it with Derrick Henry and are able to kind of construct the second year to be really top heavy, so the team can continue spending. And if we were able to restructure, I don't know who it would be this time, but if that happens, someone like Stephon Diggs kind of entertains me a little. I think another name would be someone like Demarcus Robinson. I think those two are going to have some hefty markets. A lot of teams are going to be interested in just, the star receivers availability and the lesser guys that are proven to be pretty efficient. So I like the idea of a top heavy guy or someone that's not in the pricey range.
Right. And I think I'm gonna get a little bit of some eye rolling here, but I'm not for shooting, high on this list. T. Higgins obviously is not going to happen, and then you got like Chris Godwin, who I think is very unrealistic. Amari Cooper would not interest me whatsoever. Stephon Diggs would interest me, but at the same time, if we did not get him, I would not be upset whatsoever. I don't want to say he's a character concern, but there's a little more to him than I would want this team to bring in right now, especially given all the stuff that's going on within this team right now, which is crazy. I think a guy like Keenan Allen could be realistic. I mean, really, you can buy super low on this guy right now, and who knows? You buy low and receive a huge year out of him. And he's kind of a big receiver that the Ravens have lacked for a long time. He'd kind of fit the prototype of what they don't currently have. And I think he would complement Zay and Bate pretty well. And you could probably get him for a deal like 2 years, 20 million or something like that, realistically. And who knows? Like I said, who knows? He can come out and be terrible, or he can come out and give you good 700 yards with, 6 touchdowns. And it's like, wow, that was a great signing. So, like we said, we're not asking for a wide receiver 1 or 2. We're just looking for basically a compliment to the 2 guys we have now. And then, God forbid anything happens, it's a good insurance plan. Even a guy like Darius Slayton would intrigue me a lot. He's been a good receiver in New York. He's had a very unfortunate situation, as every player has there in a weird way. I think he could benefit from playing in a good organization with a good offense and a good complementary cast around him, and not to mention a superstar quarterback. I think Darius Slayton as a wide receiver 3 would be incredible. I don't know how all of you feel. I would be super happy with that.
Yeah.
And then you just get down to guys like, I'm looking at the list here. You got Elijah Moore, Demarcus Robinson, Mecole Hardman, MVS, Noah Brown. Like, those are all kind of intriguing. I don't see how much better they would be than like a Nelson Aguilar. Like, and then at that point, I would probably just want to bring our guy back that we know, and he's probably the cheapest of those options. So there's not a lot that intrigue me, but there's a few there that I think could benefit the Ravens, and I don't think they would have to go out and break the bank and get crazy with it. But if you're gonna ask me off that list, my number one option I would say is probably go after like Darius Slade.
Yeah, I like that. I'd sort of be looking for a slight upgrade over Nelson Aguilar. You know, a guy that I've really liked the past couple of years just as a fan is Josh Palmer. I think he's pretty underrated. I feel like he's always stepped up when, he was the wide receiver 3 behind Mike Williams and Keenan Allen for a few years, and many, many times Williams and Allen were both injured, and I feel like he played pretty well as the wide receiver 1. I think he'd be a bit of an upgrade over Aguilar, maybe, $4, $5, $6 million a year. Obviously, he'd be a little more expensive than Aguilar. And then the other guy I like, Zach mentioned him, Dawson mentioned him too, Demarcus Robinson. I was kind of confused why, after the 2022 season, they sort of didn't retain Robinson and replaced him with Aguilar. And I don't think that was a bad decision, but Demarcus Robinson makes some big plays. He made a big play against the Bengals in that playoff game with Tyler Huntley. And, when I'm watching Red Zone, when the Ravens aren't playing, he makes a couple clutch plays for the Rams every now and then. He's an explosive guy. He makes big plays. So I would look at either Palmer, or Robinson. I'd probably rather have Aguilar than MVS, to be honest. And I think Noah Brown and Aguilar, probably interchangeable to me. So, like you guys said, I mean, Slayton would be cool. I think with how much the Ravens don't need a receiver, I don't know if I'd pay 8, 9, 10 million for him. He's consistently been getting, 700 yards past couple of years on a bad team with a bad quarterback. So he could get a decent contract as well. And like you guys said, I'm not really interested because of money in any of the top guys. So moving on to the draft. And obviously, as you guys know, in April, we're going to be doing a lot more in-depth analysis of all the draft prospects. But okay, I'll just pose a fun question to you guys. What's the earliest the Ravens could draft a receiver where you wouldn't be surprised? Would it be round 2? Would you be surprised if they took a guy at 59?
I don't think I would. I've been seeing a lot of reports that Luther Burden is that his name, right? Luther Burden? Yeah. He's an odd name. I've been seeing a lot of reports that he could potentially slip out of round 1 and fall on the draft board. He had obviously lesser of a year this past season than he did in 2023, which is the season that blew him off the charts and kind of put his name on the map. So there's a little bit of concerns with him. He's a phenomenal receiver. And if he drops, there's potential that a team could move up. I'm not saying the Ravens are going to do that, of course, because trading up for a receiver just sounds wild for the Ravens, but there's a potential chance there. I don't think round 1 receiver is the pick. Obviously, I think there's a very, very small world where that happens. God forbid something crazy happens. And I mean, if you're looking at the top guys other than McMillan, of course, VC's probably going to be a top 10 pick, potentially top 5. Who knows? You got Burden, Agbuka, Golden, Trey Harris, Isaiah Bond. All these guys are kind of going to be right there, end of first round, second into third, potentially. I just don't see it. I don't see the Ravens spending an early draft pick on one of these guys. They have tons of capital late in the draft, and we know the Ravens like their late round receivers. We see it every year. They pick receivers from rounds 4 to 7 religiously, and unfortunately, a lot of them don't end up working out. So we'll see. To answer your question, I think 59. I would be surprised. Not concerned, but I'd be surprised.
I totally agree.
What is the best receiver the Ravens have ever drafted on day 3? Is it like Tylan Wallace?
Oh, yeah.
Is it Tylan Wallace?
James Prochet? No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe just productivity wise. Yeah.
Are we forgetting somebody?
I hope not.
I really hope we're not forgetting anybody.
I'm thinking about it though, and
there's nothing there. Like I
can't think of anyone.
I don't care who it is. If we pick any receiver from round 4 or back, I'm not going to be confident that it could translate into something potentially good.
Remember when the Ravens took Jordan Lasley and Jaleel Scott in the same draft, and we were all so excited about both of them, and We
That's what I'm saying,
Ravens
like,
fans were so brainwashed about the receiver position. Like, we thought that a 4th-round receiver was gonna be a Pro Bowler.
It's gonna fix the franchise.
okay, listen, us Ravens fans have gone through a lot with wide receivers in the last 5 seasons. Or not even 5.
No, our
longer
whole
than that,
life.
10.
Our
Yeah,
whole life.
literally, our whole life. Like, there's been a lot of free agent signings that were just absolutely fails. Like Jeremy Maclin, Michael
Yeah.
Crabtree. Like, what are we doing out here, man?
Honestly,
It's been a tough road.
I would take back whole life a little bit. I'd say since, like, 2013, it's been rough. It's been rough, you know?
Yeah, since we lost like the
Bolden and
amazing core that we had in the Super
Yeah.
Bowl of Jones, Torrey, and Bolden.
yeah. So basically what I'm trying to say is I wouldn't take a receiver day 3 because I think it's kind of a waste for the Ravens.
Right.
So,
Right.
you know, I'd much rather
Yeah,
them
agreed.
take a tight end in the 4th round or an offensive lineman. But, you
I'm
know,
not gonna lie real quick though, Brad. I'm gonna cut you off. I'm a huge Amuka Ibuka fan. And
if he was there at 20, what's even
if
a pick?
he's
29?
there at
27?
27,
Yeah, 27. No, I think I would too. I
might
think I would.
want him, dude. He's a freak. I wanted him last year if he would have came out to the draft, but he ended up going back at Ohio State.
Yeah.
Once again, had a great season. And
Won the
dude,
Natty.
I would be a fan. I would not be upset if he's the pick at 27. I can't sit here and lie to you. As long as, of course, they address the offensive line and there's no other very glaring need.
Yeah.
As we talked about in our pod about offensive line. As long as they do that, I would be okay with Ibuka coming to Baltimore at pick 27.
You know what I would like? I was doing a mock draft earlier today, and I saw Isaiah Bond there at 59.
Heck yeah, that's
And I was like,
my dream. That's my dream.
I think that's an easy pick. I think you take that every time. So that would be interesting.
Jack,
Jack,
what y'all know about Jaden Higgins?
good player. Probably 3rd round guy.
Round
Maybe
3 or
2nd
4.
round.
Jaden Higgins, I would take him.
I like
That's
Jack Beck too. TCU. He does it all. Good blocker, everything like that. Tez Johnson, Bo Nix's adopted brother, is a really good player.
Johnson.
Yeah, those are the only guys I've watched so far. Obviously, we'll get much more into that in April. So, in terms of if we were in charge of the Ravens, I'll just really quickly lay out what I would do, because obviously we don't want to overlap what we've been saying for each position. Like, we can't say trade for Micah Parsons, and then we can't say for our O-line video, get Ronnie Stanley and Kevin Zeitler, and then we can't say for the receiver video, sign T. Higgins and trade for Deebo Samuel. So with how I want the Ravens to address O-line and edge, I would address receiver like this. If Mark Andrews ends up being traded, I think you got to sign someone, because right now you have sort of 4 options. You have Flowers, Bateman, likely Andrews. If he's gone, it's kind of 3. So let's say Andrews is gone, you got to go get like 100%, either go get Slayton, Robinson, Josh Palmer, Noah Brown, maybe even someone a little better. 2nd round receiver, I'd be fine with any of that. If Andrews stays, I don't think it's a big deal. Maybe just bring back Aguilar, or take a receiver at some point in the draft. But yeah, that's kind of all I have on the situation.
I cannot get behind bringing back Aguilar as the wide receiver 3. I don't know what it is, man. I just have trauma from that Bills game, and I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, if we would have had Zay, we would have won." Obviously, it would have been a better chance, but it just sucks, man, because you lose one receiver for even if it's like 1 or 2 weeks mid-season, and then you have one good, capable wide receiver that you can legitimately trust as the guy to take all the reign. And I can't trust Nelson Aguilar to do that. And I like the guy, but he's a budget receiver for a reason. That's why we brought him back for literally not much at all before. If I'm the Ravens right now, and like you kind of said, Brad, just goes off the world where Mark Andrews is potentially moved on from, whether it's a trade, a release, whatever happens. I don't think it's going to happen, but in the world, if it does, you got to go out 100%, go after a pretty legitimate weapon, because you're losing, you can say it, Lamar's favorite target. I mean, you're gonna lose a huge receiving threat on this team, and yeah, you have likely Zay and Bate, but it's like kind of want more. I mean, you kind of want more, at least one more legitimate weapon, whether it's a receiver, another tight end, who knows. But I would say if Andrews is traded, go out and get a guy like Darius Slayton, Keenan Allen. I mean, one of those guys you have to. I kind of agree with Brad there. Or an early draft pick, maybe round 1, maybe trade up round 2. At the latest, I would say round 3, early round 3, if you can move up. In a world where he's not traded, Mark Andrews, I still think you have to address the position and get a pretty damn good player, but you don't have to really go out there stressed and, go after one of those mid to good tier wide receivers. And you could probably get a guy like Noah Brown. You could probably get like I'm going to keep relaying back to Darius Slayton. I don't think he's going to have a crazy market. I think that's very realistic. And I think the Ravens will have more than enough money to go after a guy like him. And I think he would complement us well. And like you said, look what he's done with not superstar quarterbacks. And now you give him a superstar quarterback and, you give him a good cast around him. And, dude, that guy could explode and be our wide receiver too. Who knows? There's a lot of options here for the Ravens, like there is with, offensive line that we talked about previously. And it's really just going to come down to, like, if Mark Andrews has moved on from. It's going to be a huge turning stone for the offense if he has moved on from. And I think the Ravens will be prepared for it either way. I just hope that, we're going into next season, and we have at least 4 legitimate pass catcher threats that we can rely on at any given moment.
So you guys both kind of talked about Mark leaving in this scenario, which is pretty interesting to me. I could not think of a scenario where we get rid of him. With the cap, it is enticing, especially if they really want to target the offensive line. But I am totally on the opposite end. I think Mark is definitely retained. And just given that, that's your 4 legitimate pass catchers, right? Likely, Andrews, Bateman, Zay. So if those 4 are covered, I think you target the low end guys.
Yeah.
I love DeMarcus Robinson, but his market value being $3 million doesn't make sense to me. I think he's going to have some demand. So I see more of a Josh Palmer, Marcus Valdes-Scantling, or Nelson Aguilar again. I think you have to get a really low budget guy. If Mark does leave, I think it almost guarantees what you guys said, a medium pay kind of guy or higher, just because then it gives you the 4 heavy targets. But in my world, I definitely see Mark staying and targeting someone in the low end. What the Chiefs kind of got away with last year was waiting until it was the bare bones of the wide receiver market and then getting, starting caliber guys. I'd be interested to see if the Ravens entertain a thought process like that. If someone like DeAndre Hopkins doesn't get swept up for the entire length of free agency, or Hollywood Brown, if people aren't entertaining, him, maybe a reunion. I'd like that. I think there's a lot of options here because it seems that Eric DeCosta really wants another weapon, like we're saying. Even if that does make 5 capable pass catchers, that's not any of us saying, oh man, that's us being more confident. And I think he'll address it. I just really hope it's not an overpaid position. If we're talking, our past conversations about pass rush and about offensive line, I want them to address those 2 far more than I want them to address a high-end wide receiver here.
Yeah. Can you imagine Hollywood coming back to the Ravens?
Dude.
And we have Hollywood,
dude.
Zay, and Bate.
Fun.
That'd
I
be
think
kind of
that's
crazy.
something, and I know Zach doesn't think Andrews is going to get traded. I obviously would not be surprised at all if he's on the team and, whatever. But I think if Andrews does leave, like, you got to probably go get Darius Slayton if you can, or Hollywood. I think it'd be so fun to have Hollywood back. The sort of the full circle moment of like Zay Flowers, Bateman, and like the 3 guys playing all together.
That would be so much fun.
That'd be pretty cool.
Be awesome.
That'd be a pretty cool moment. I can't lie. And to go back to that Mark Andrews segment, I don't know how I feel about the situation. I don't know if I want him gone. I don't know if I want him back. In the end, it doesn't matter what any of us think. I think the business side of football is more important to the Ravens, hopefully. I mean, if you're trying to win a Super Bowl, you gotta do what you have to do. You gotta be like the Eagles and cut ties if you have to. You're trying to make a Super Bowl in the end. It's not about people's feelings. It's not about that, man. And if you can save $11 million in cap space from moving on from Andrews, and you have a very capable, young, budgeted tight end sitting right behind him, who's I believe could be a top 10 tight end with tight end 1 reps. I mean, seriously, dude, why wouldn't you? You can move on from Andrews. Yeah, it's bittersweet.
You got Kolar too, like behind Likely.
that's what I'm saying. Like, I understand it'll be bittersweet, and after the way the season ended, it would kind of be like oh, really? But it's like, it's a business. You have a very good tight end sitting behind him, far cheaper, far younger. And dude, you could take that $11 million and then restructure a couple contracts, potentially Lamar, Marlon Humphrey. You get Stanley locked up. That will help you too. It's like, dude, you can have some money to play with, and you can use that $11 million and go get one of those wide receivers plus.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, it could benefit the Ravens in such a good way. And I know it would suck, man, to move on from Andrews. It's the truth of the business, man. And the Ravens got to look at that. And I believe they are, based off the comments from Eric DaCosta the other day at the Combine. They kind of asked him, hey, there's a decision to be made on Mark Andrews. And they were not at one point was there any certainty of like, oh, he'll be back on the team.
Yeah, exactly.
They were kind of just beating around it, saying like, he's a good player. We know he's going to have a good year.
Yeah.
They could have easily came out and said, he's going to be on the team next year. There's no worry. They didn't. So it shows that the Ravens definitely know what's ahead of them. They have a decision to be made. And I'm curious to what they do, man. I'm probably a fan of them doing it.
Yeah, I would agree with you, Dawson. And if a reporter asked about the future of Rashad Bateman or Isaiah Likely, Eric DaCosta would have been like, what? Like, he would have been like, what are you talking about? But like, he expected Andrew's question, and he didn't commit to him being on the roster in 2023. Right. So I mean, I just said 2023. It is 2025.
Yeah, that's crazy. That's insane. 2023.
Anyway, I think that's all we had on receivers. Obviously not crazy. Don't think of any big signings are going to be made, but we'll see what happens. So yeah, appreciate you guys for watching the video. I think we're going to do one more of these. We'll probably do corner and safety together because, in the Zach Orr / Mike McDonald of old defense, everyone plays everything. So we'll just kind of incorporate those two position groups together. But yeah, we appreciate all you guys for watching. Make sure to like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. You can find us on Spotify if you'd rather listen over there. Links in the description of every video. And yeah, with that being said, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.